While other taxi dispatchers relied on standard computer screens and written logs, Carlos surrounded his workstation with rainbow-colored charts, maps marked with different colored zones, and a filing system that looked like art project organization. His colleagues thought his methods were quirky, until someone realized the elaborate color coding was actually a brilliant adaptation for managing dyslexia in a job that required processing hundreds of addresses daily. Metro Taxi Company on 5th Street operated 47 vehicles across the city, serving thousands of customers daily with pickup requests that ranged from simple airport runs to complex multi-stop business trips. The dispatch center was the nerve center of the operation, where a team of 4 dispatchers coordinated drivers, managed schedules, and ensured that every customer request was handled efficiently and accurately. Carlos Rodriguez had been working as a dispatcher for 5 years, and during that time, he had developed a reputation for exceptional accuracy and organizational skills. In an industry where missed pickups, confused addresses, and scheduling conflicts were common problems, Carlos maintained a perfect record. He never sent drivers to wrong locations, never mixed up customer information, and never created the kind of coordination errors that could cost the company clients. But what struck his colleagues most was Carlos's unique approach to organizing his workspace. While other dispatchers relied on standard computer interfaces and basic written logs, Carlos had transformed his station into what looked like an elaborate art installation. Every surface was covered with color-coded charts, rainbow-organized maps, and filing systems that used different colored folders, labels, and markers. His city map was divided into zones marked with different colors: red for downtown, blue for the airport district, green for residential areas, yellow for industrial zones. Each taxi driver was assigned a specific color combination, and Carlos tracked their locations using colored pins and markers that created patterns across the city map. Creator information was organized using a complex color system that other dispatchers found confusing, but that allowed Carlos to process requests faster than anyone else. Pickup times were marked with specific colored symbols, special requests were highlighted with particular marker combinations, and repeat customers were identified through color-coded cards that contained their preferences and history. His colleagues initially assumed Carlos was just very artistic or perhaps obsessively organized. Some thought his colorful system was unnecessary and overcomplicated. Others figured he had developed his own personal method for staying organized. What none of them realized was that Carlos's elaborate visual system was actually a sophisticated adaptation for managing severe dyslexia in a job that required constant reading, writing, and processing of written information. Carlos had struggled with dyslexia throughout his education, but he had learned to disguise his reading difficulties so well that most people never realized he had a learning disability. He had developed strategies for avoiding situations that required extensive reading or writing, and he had become expert at using context clues and visual information to compensate for his difficulty processing written text. When Carlos first applied for the dispatcher position, he had been worried that the job would expose his reading challenges. Dispatch work required processing addresses quickly, reading customer names and information accurately, and maintaining detailed written logs of all transactions. For someone with dyslexia, these tasks could be overwhelming and error-prone. But Carlos had learned that his brain processed visual and spatial information exceptionally well, even though it struggled with traditional text. He realized that if he could transform the written information required for dispatch work into visual patterns and color-coded systems, he might be able to perform the job more effectively than people who relied solely on reading text. Carlos began developing his color-coding system gradually, starting with simple visual markers for different types of calls, and gradually expanding into the comprehensive organizational method that covered every aspect of his work. He assigned specific colors to different areas of the city,
making it easier for him to process addresses without having to read street names character by character. He created visual symbols for different types of pickup requests: medical appointments, airport runs, business meetings, personal errands, so that he could identify the nature of each call at a glance, rather than reading detailed notes. He developed color-coded systems for tracking driver availability, customer preferences, and scheduling priorities. Most importantly, Carlos discovered that his visual system didn't just help him compensate for his dyslexia, it actually made him more efficient and accurate than dispatchers who relied entirely on text-based information. Colors and patterns allowed him to process information faster, spot potential conflicts more easily, and maintain better oversight of the entire operation. But Carlos kept his dyslexia completely private. He had learned to be cautious about disclosing learning disabilities after experiencing discrimination in previous jobs. His color-coded system.
The discovery came through Maria Santos, a new dispatcher who had been hired to help manage the company's expanding operations. Maria had a background in logistics and operations management, and she was impressed by Carlos's efficiency and accuracy. But she was also curious about his unconventional organizational methods. During a busy Friday afternoon, Maria watched Carlos handle a complex series of pickup requests that included multiple address changes, special timing requirements, and driver coordination challenges. While other dispatchers would have struggled to keep track of all the variables, Carlos managed everything seamlessly, using his color-coded system. Maria noticed that Carlos never seemed to read addresses in the traditional way. Instead, he would look at a request, immediately reach for specific colored markers, and begin creating visual patterns on his charts and maps. He processed information faster than anyone else, but his method was completely different from standard dispatch procedures. When the rush period ended, Maria approached Carlos with professional curiosity. "Carlos, I've been watching your organizational system, and I'm really impressed by how efficient it is. Did you develop those color-coding methods yourself?" Carlos was cautious in his response, unsure how much to reveal about his techniques. "I've found that visual organization works well for me. Different colors help me keep track of all the different types of information we process. It's really sophisticated. You seem to process requests faster than anyone else, and your accuracy rate is perfect. Have you considered that your methods might be valuable for training other dispatchers?" Maria's questions suggested genuine professional interest rather than criticism, and Carlos realized she might be someone who could understand his situation. "Maria, can I ask you something? In your logistics background, did you ever work with people who had learning disabilities or different ways of processing information?" "Some. I learned that there are many different approaches to organizing and managing information, and that people with learning differences often develop really innovative methods. Why do you ask?" Carlos made a decision that would change how he approached his work and his learning disability. "Because that's what you've been observing. I have dyslexia, and everything you see here is adapted for working with written information when traditional reading and writing are challenging. My color system isn't just organization, it's translation." Maria was quiet for a moment, processing this information and realizing that what she had assumed was creative organization was actually sophisticated disability accommodation. "Carlos, what you've developed is incredible. You've essentially created a visual language that allows you to process complex information more efficiently than standard text-based methods. This goes way beyond basic accommodation. This is innovation." That conversation marked the beginning of a transformation in how Carlos approached his dyslexia and his professional capabilities. For the first time, he began to see his adaptations not as compensations for a disability, but as advanced techniques that had value beyond his personal needs. Maria encouraged Carlos to document his methods and consider sharing them with the broader transportation and logistics community. She helped him realize that his visual processing system could benefit other people with dyslexia and might even improve efficiency for neurotypical workers. Carlos began working with Maria to create formal descriptions of his color-coding techniques and visual organization methods. They documented how he transformed text-based information into visual patterns, how he used colors to represent different types of data, and how his system eliminated the reading errors that commonly occurred in dispatch work. Word of Carlos's story and methods began to spread through the transportation industry. Other taxi companies and logistics operations asked to learn about his visual dispatch techniques. Vocational rehabilitation services requested information about his adaptation strategies for helping other people with dyslexia find success in communication-intensive jobs. Carlos was promoted to lead dispatcher and began training new employees in both traditional dispatch methods and alternative visual techniques. His training programs were particularly valuable for employees who struggled with traditional text-based systems, but many neurotypical dispatchers also found that incorporating visual elements improved their own efficiency and accuracy. Metro Taxi Company implemented Carlos's color coding system company-wide, recognizing that his methods reduced errors, improved customer service, and made training more accessible for employees with different learning styles. But perhaps most importantly, Carlos became an advocate for recognizing that learning disabilities in communication-intensive jobs could be assets rather than limitations. His experience demonstrated that Carlos also speaks at conferences about dyslexia in the workplace and advocates for recognizing the innovative potential of employees with learning differences. His message is always practical and encouraging. Dyslexia doesn't limit your ability to organize information or coordinate complex operations. It just means you develop different ways of processing and managing data. Sometimes those different ways are actually more effective and reliable than conventional approaches. When people ask Carlos about his advice for other individuals with dyslexia, his response reflects the confidence he has gained through years of professional success. Don't let anyone convince you that jobs requiring reading and writing are off-limits because you have dyslexia. Focus on developing systems that work with how your brain processes information, and you'll often discover that your alternative methods are superior to standard approaches. Your learning difference isn't a limitation. It's a different kind of intelligence that can lead to innovation. Now I ask you, have you encountered someone whose unconventional methods turned out to be more effective than traditional approaches? Someone whose learning differences led to creative solutions that others wanted to adopt? Share their story in the comments below, because here at Silent Heroes, we believe that the most innovative workplace techniques often come from people who can't rely on conventional methods. Thank you for watching. If this story changed how you think about dyslexia, workplace adaptation, and visual learning techniques, subscribe to help us share more stories about turning challenges into professional advantages. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who works with learning differences or organizational systems. Until next time, remember that the most effective professional methods often develop from necessity, and that learning differences frequently lead to approaches that benefit everyone in the workplace.